give a brief talk about the point chisel. I'm here in Vermont. I'm working on this large piece, just finishing it up. This is a monument to Bill Wilson, who founded Alcoholics Anonymous, and I worked on it in collaboration with two other artists, Alessandro Lombardo and Kellie Steve. It's being done in Vermont Danby marble, and we enlarged it from a small plaster model that's 1/3 the size using compasses, and that's a technique which we will cover in sculpting stone in a future episode. So the point chisel is kind of the primary tool, in addition to a hammer, in most stone sculptors' arsenals. However, I find that in our day and age, it gets overlooked because we have power tools such as pneumatic tools and grinders and diamond blades, and so the point isn't used as much, except maybe to knock away stone after we make cuts using a diamond blade. But in fact, this is an extremely useful tool. It has not been replaced by the power tools I mentioned, and it does something different. And in fact, you cannot remove as much material with a pneumatic hammer as you can with a point chisel. That is a fact. So using this properly is key. If you're sitting here and your skills aren't appropriate for this tool, then it's not going to do much for you, and then you're going to go back to those other tools that I mentioned. But this is something that is fundamental to learn. So let's talk a little bit about it. Basically, it's just a straight shaft that ends in a point, and we're always going to be using our hammer lengthwise with it, never with the short axis. That is a technique that can be used for softer chiseling that we can talk about in other episodes. But here we're going to be using the straight axis of the hammer, driving the force straight into the shaft of the chisel and then straight into the stone. And the object is to work as efficiently as possible to drive a line of force straight and sharp into the stone so that it enters and breaks apart the material, okay? For that reason, we don't want to be working from our wrist or from our elbow, where the smallest muscles in our arm reside. We want to be using the larger muscle groups, which are closer to our torsos, right? The muscles start off larger, closest to our torsos, and then they get smaller as they go out towards the end of the limbs. So we're going to be using our shoulders, our shoulder girdles, the muscles that attach to our chest and our back, okay? And for anybody who's ever played a racket sport like tennis or baseball, okay, you know that. You know that you don't swing from your wrist. You want to swing from your body, okay, to generate the most power. So that's what we're going to do here, is I'm going to be using my shoulder, and one good tip to making sure that you are employing those larger muscle groups is to think about the hammer coming back to your ear, okay? At least when you're practicing. And then this will become routine. And this is a tip that was taught to me by my maestro, Marcello Senati, a Sinise sculptor, okay? So you think about the hammer and coming back to your ear, and then coming down and connecting with the head of this chisel. When I hit the chisel, okay, it's at an angle. Now, sometimes I might need to hit it a little bit more straight in, just so that it doesn't slide. So for example, if I'm too acute with my angle, it's going to slide across a stone. But if I hit completely perpendicular to the stone, it's not going to do too much. Yes, it's going to blow out a little bit of material, but it's mostly going to drive the force straight into this huge mass, and then it just dissipates and nothing happens. In fact, I can risk damaging my final surface. Let's say that I wanted to remove all this material and have a smooth surface underneath, which is the case when we're working towards our sculpture. What happens when I hit with a point perpendicular to the surface is that I'm driving a sharp line of force straight into the stone. And if I don't hold it at an angle, that force has no place to escape, right? And so what happens is that I get that line of force going straight in, and it's going to bruise the stone. So if you've ever seen what happens when a pebble or a rock hits a windshield on a car, is that it crushes the glass. It micro fractures it, right? And it just looks like a white bruise on the glass. And that same thing happens to our marble crystals underneath the rough stuff. And once we strip that away and we start sanding and wanting to polish it, it really leaves an unsightly white mark on the surface, okay? So that's something just to be aware of. So when I start off, I might give myself a little bit of a toe hold, a little bit of a divot, and then I'm going to turn so that that force has a place to escape. And it's going to want to escape in the area of least resistance. So if I have an edge here and I'm working near the edge, it's going to break off in the direction where there's nothing holding it back, which makes sense. As you can see, I'm working across the surface here, and I'm creating sort of a crater, okay, by blowing out material. And then I'm hitting down on the other side because now there's no material here, there's no resistance. So if I hit on this side, it's going to want to drive the force out this way and take this material in between. At least that's the theory. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I'm using different points here, and I'm scaling it up with my hammers based on what I want to do. So in places where I want to hit hard and remove a larger chunk, I might use a larger hammer like this, which weighs 1,500 grams, 1.5 kilos, okay? And I'll just hit it, and I'll be more decisive with it, right? And larger pieces are going to come out. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we will post a more thorough video on the point chisel soon.